Okay, welcome everyone to the Town of Shelburne's Parks and Recreation Task Force meeting today, September 20th. So I will call the meeting to order as we do have quorum now, and I will begin by reciting the land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the Town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and its resources. We encourage residents to review the call to action information by visiting the following website to further research and educate oneself. And basically that website is www.dccrc.ca. And you'll be able to find the educational links through that link. Okay, so moving on, number 2 would be the adoption of the agenda. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that. Okay, Dan and Steve, perfect. And I guess I can, I guess I should have read the recommendation for that, or is that okay? We're okay? Okay. Okay, on to number 3. So disclosure of any pecuniary interest. Obviously, we all know if you have any, you can declare it at the time within the agenda or previously to the clerk or the deputy clerk. Okay, and so number 4 would be the adoption of the minutes of the meeting that was held June 21st. Now, we did, so we did not meet quorum for the meeting that was supposed to be held on July 19th. So it would just be the adoption of the minutes from June 21st, and that would be it resolved that the minutes of the Parks and Rec Task Force meeting on June 21st be adopted as presented. And if I can get a mover and a seconder for that. Kyle and Randy, perfect. Okay, and number 5 is our presentation.
Sorry, Lindsay, can I just interrupt you for a quick moment? Sorry, can you take a vote?
Oh, I forgot to say, I forgot to say if everyone agrees. Sorry about that. Does everyone agree? Perfect, passed. Do I need to go back for the adoption of the agenda for that? Okay, we're good. Okay, so number 5 is a presentation from Maureen. I don't know how to say your last name, Maureen. Can you say that for me?
Yeah, it's Riedler.
Okay, it looked like that, but I am so bad with names, I didn't want to butcher it.
No.
So she's a member of the bereavement working group of Hills of Headwater, which is also a collaborative working group with the Ontario Health Team. So in your agenda package, you would have noticed that there's a little presentation. Alice is going to share the presentation for us, and Maureen's going to kind of walk us through it with regards to wind phones. So I'll let Maureen take over.
Great, thank you. And start, of course, with thanking you for having me out. I am, you can start that presentation now, Alice, that I am just a member, or I guess I co-chair the group, but we have a committee of about 9 different organizations that belong to our bereavement working group. But on top of us is the Hills of Headwaters Collaborative Ontario Health Team. Hopefully you have heard about them. Basically a partnership of health care organizations and social organizations that provide and work together to unify our healthcare and social service system in Dufferin-Caledon. We've been meeting for, who knows, about 2 or 3 years. Somewhere started at the beginning of COVID, and then COVID hit us, and I don't even know, then there was a big blur. So we are actually under them, and we are part of their strategic plan. And specifically, our committee looks after bereavement. You want to change that, Alice? We are part of 2 committees, actually, the Mental Health and Addictions Committee and the Palliative Care Committee. Reasoning B is that many of the people that we see, I'm also the executive director of Hospice Dufferin. So many of the people that we see have mental health conditions along with their bereavement. And of course, palliative care, part of palliative care is that continuum of care that goes into bereavement. So we actually sit them and get directions from both of those committees. The committee consists of people from the Dufferin Family Health Team, Hospice Dufferin, Bethel Hospice, Dufferin Children and Family Services, Dufferin Oaks, Avalon, and Headwaters Healthcare. And we have a few others that come and go as the projects move forward. So the next part is the projects. I'll switch that out. So we basically right now have been working in the last year on 3 projects that we're pretty proud of. Right now, we are in the middle very heavily into the Butterfly Project. If you haven't heard of that, our Butterfly Project is we are collecting 200 of the butterflies. You can see one in the middle of that picture there. People are decorating them, coloring them, writing messages on them. In November, it is National Bereavement Week, but we've made it a month, and Headwaters Hospital has agreed to hang as many of those butterflies as we can get back up in their in the entranceway. We have 2,000, so that's our ultimate goal, but that's a pretty hefty goal, but we're getting pretty close. I know with mine, almost all mine are out. And just a way to recognize that bereavement does is in our community, and that just a way for people to find resources that are having bereavement, and for the community to think about how you would approach your neighbor. How do you talk to your neighbor that is bereaved? So that's our Butterfly Project. We also have condolence cards that are being given out at all of the deaths that happened immediately in our Caledon Dufferin area. So Bethel Hospice, the nursing homes, long-term care facilities, some of the retirement homes have taken them as well, however, and the hospital, and their condolence cards that are just from the OHT, and also giving them information that if they're needing supports after, what organizations they can get those supports from. And of course, the Wind Phones. So the Wind Phones is a project. You want to switch to the next slide, is what we've sort of come here tonight to talk about. It's really a really simple concept. It was originally from Japan, but they are now all over the world. And I don't know how many people have heard of them. The idea behind it is it's that they are unconnected phones, normally rotary phones. The young people don't know what they are, but some of us have been around long enough to have used had time with them. And the idea is that these rotary phones are placed in areas, in communities where people can go to them and talk to their loved one and get peace from that. And I do have a video. I don't know if anybody has anybody stopped to watch it? I know when I'm on a committee, I never have time to do that. So I just wonder if we could just run that, Alice, and then have you pulled that up for me?
I'm working on it. Let me know if it
Thanks.
goes through.
So I can talk about what happened was in Japan there was a large tsunami, and a gentleman decided to put up a wind phone, and it's been up for many, many years, and that's where the concept came from. And people it was near the water where many lost their lives, and that was what started it all.
I think it's going to be a commercial first.
I
So.
probably.
Okay.
I love Montana, but I'm doing this for our family.
They will fight you dirty.
Is there any other way?
Signing this is a declaration of war.
We're already at war.
Don't you love it how you can't the ad?
Good show.
It's
Good
often
show.
our first reaction when someone is missing. We pick up the phone and try to connect. Lee Cowan explores the healing power of a long-distance call.
In a corner of the Pacific Northwest, muffled by moss and trees that are centuries old, sits an out-of-place relic. A rotary phone that's connected to nothing except the wind.
Hey, Ellie Belly. How are you? I miss you, little girl.
Every few weeks, Andre and Aaron Sylvester and the rest of their young family
Hi, baby.
trudge out to Priest Point Park outside Olympia, Washington, to use that phone to call Joelle, their 4-year-old daughter.
Oh, this never gets easier.
Without warning, Joelle died last year from an infection.
Love you, Joelle.
But out here, Joelle is somehow there, on the other end of the line.
Literally, I can hear her.
All right, baby. I always feel lighter, ready to go back into the real world of, without my daughter.
The phone mysteriously appeared shortly after Joelle died,
No one was here, and I thought this might be a good place, so I...
put there by photographer and amateur carpenter Corey Dembeck as his way to grieve.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine if something like that happened to my daughter, and it just was something I had to do. Am I behind you? Am I behind you?
One of his own daughters was friends with Joelle. She's now 5.
I don't think I really got how many people would really needed something like this.
For weeks that phone was there and few knew. But then word quietly spread. Soon complete strangers were braving the Northwest rain, making the longest of long-distance calls. Lori Provo was one of them.
When you're grieving, you look for any avenue to try to connect that you can, to make that emotional connection. And that's what the telephone, I thought, would do for me.
And did it?
It did. It did.
Hi, Tyler. It's Mom.
She lost her 27-year-old son, Tyler, last year.
I'll be back to talk to you again.
Of course, it's very emotional. As soon as you pick up the phone, the tears flow. And I've been out here several times, and it's been the same experience every time. I have Kleenex in my pocket. You can't explain why the emotions are flowing as soon as you pick up that phone, but they do.
The desire to connect with lost loved ones is universal, especially when the end comes so fast. In 2011, in the wake of Japan's devastating tsunami, survivors started flocking to this small phone booth high on a hill, put there months earlier by a man who just wanted to talk to his cousin, who had died of cancer.
もしもし。もしもし。じいちゃん、今元気？僕さ、3学期越したらもう4年生になるよ。早いでしょ。来年2年生になるからね。
For all the lost souls who the sea never returned, that phone of the wind became one of the few places to offer a kind of inexplicable solace.
みんな住人とも家族全員頑張ってるから心配しなくていいよ。
That idea had blown across the Pacific. Corey heard about it, and it stuck, for reasons he still doesn't know.
I just thought that it would be perfect for now, and as far as I know, there wasn't, at the time, wasn't one that I knew of in the United States.
Much to his surprise, that old phone helped Corey, too.
When my mom passed away, I never really, dealt with it, I guess. Hey, Mom. It's me.
The impulse to call her, he says, just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. I miss you. I guess I'll talk to you later. All right, bye. Love you.
It makes no logical sense to dial a phone connected to nothing. Yet, for the Sylvesters and countless others, speaking their grief to the wind seems to offer a certain kind of connection that heals.
I think one of the most dangerous things that you can do to yourself is to keep your feelings, whatever they are, locked up inside. Bye, Ellie.
Bye, Ellie.
I love you. Something so simple, an old rotary phone
Right.
on a tree. It's just crazy how much impact that has.
Whispers in the wind. You might not hear them unless you listen.
Oh, did you?
Thank you. And I know that's pretty emotional. But I do think it sends the story, and I certainly always I've had one of those weeks. My mother died in November, and I just had a new baby, my granddaughter, and I want to call my mom a lot this week in those last couple of weeks. So yeah, I forget how much that video can hurt. Anyway, move on. So what we have basically are here to come and ask is that we, as a committee, would love to add some wind phones to our area. We currently have, we're thinking of installing 4 to 6 rotary phones throughout Caledon and Dufferin County for people to use. And we've come to this committee in particular to look at where, if and where it would be possible in the Shelburne area. We do have already the plaques, and we already have the phones. So we are well on our way in that area. So we're not really asking for money. We're sort of asking for assistance in helping us figure out whether you feel that this would be something that your community would benefit from, and whether and where, and if there, is there any things that we would need to consider, like insurance and things like that. That may be, not something that we would have to cover, but maybe the town would be already under their policy or something like that. We don't know, but that's sort of what the discussion we'd love to have with you tonight. So that's my ask. And it can be a variety of things, but we are going to probably keep ours pretty simple. We do have volunteers that are willing to sort of work on whatever we come up with would look best in the spot that we find. Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you very much for the information. Yeah, that was a nice little video. I'm over here like wiping my tears. Okay, so does anyone have any questions for Maureen? I can't see anyone's hand, so I'm assuming no.
I think
if I may, Madam Chair,
Yep.
Thank you. So I'm not sure what this is just for the committee to accept. Is that where we are right now? Okay.
Yeah, for right now, I think it's just sort of we're accepting it as information, but what we can do is maybe even under new business, we could discuss whether we want to create like a resolution to council, but I'll let Alice, she's got her hands up, she might be able to have a better answer than me.
Yes, so when staff created the agenda, we always try not to put a leading recommendation on an agenda. So we always put for information. The committee has full capacity to change that resolution. That is just the recommendation. You can make a completely different recommendation. You do not have to receive it as information. Should you choose to go forward with this project, you can absolutely make that decision to go forward. Will Thompson is here, staff member from the town, could discuss potential locations, but ultimately the request would have to come from the committee to council, and then council would direct staff to work with Maureen ultimately if council chose to accept your recommendation. And absolutely within your recommendation, you can make recommendations of locations, but most likely council would make the recommendation that staff work with Maureen and the rest of the team as far as placement and location and logistics, so that the committee doesn't have to get logged down in the logistics.
Well, what I would suggest is what Madam Chair suggested, which is I would like, with everybody's permission, to have this discussed in the other business, and that way we could come to some kind of consensus one way or the other, and then circle back if need be. But just in closing with my remarks, Maureen, yeah, that was a tearjerker for sure. Grieving is a part of everybody's life, and I think people always struggle to find ways to connect with loved ones, and this is just another way of doing it. I'd never heard of this before. At first, I was kind of skeptical as when I read it in the materials, like, what is this? But seeing that video, if it could make a difference in anybody's life, and you hear this all the time, if it's just one person, but truly, if it is one person that it helps to go through the grieving process, then putting that phone on a tree bark or anywhere else in the town would be worth it. And so I just wanted to thank you for your time in presenting this to the committee, and be assured that it'll be given good consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we need. We thank you very much for that.
I definitely agree with Steve 100%. I was a little, at the beginning, I thought, okay, I'm not quite sure. And then, you know, when I thought a little bit more about it, and then after seeing that video, you can really see the difference that it makes in that video to those 3 people, you know, that you know, pick up the phone and just, it gives them that sense of connection, right? And I really think that anyone who gives it a try would be shocked on how it potentially could make them feel, right? And the help it can provide with healing and grieving. So I really love this. So yes, I think when we get to number 7, under new business, we can definitely have a little bit more of a discussion, and then decide what we'd like to do with regards to like a motion or a resolution that could then go to council for further review. So I'm going to, if no one else has any more questions at this point for Maureen, I'm going to read the recommendation as written for now, so she can head out for the rest of her evening, and then we can move on to number 6. Okay, perfect. Okay, so be it resolved that the presentation by Maureen Riddler of Bereavement Working Group of Our Hills of Headwaters Collaborative Ontario Health Team be received as information. That's a mouthful, so if I could get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Okay, Dan and Steve, perfect. Okay, and all in favor? Passed. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, Maureen. We really appreciate your time this evening and your little presentation, which will be wonderful to pass on to council if need be. And maybe council will have you come and speak to them. I don't know, but we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much. You too. Okay, so number 6 is just sort of our general information area, and tonight it's going to pertain mainly to the Parks and Rec master plan for Fiddle Park. So I'm not sure kind of what we want to do with this, if it seems a little more like, I don't know, like for me, I feel like we are looking at potentially honing down something that we can take to council as a recommendation to maybe work on for the 2024 budget. So I don't know if there was something that you guys saw in the plan that would sort of facilitate a quick win, where it would be something that we could look, you know, have council look at to work into the 2024 budget. So yeah, if anyone wants to sort of take the floor and just have some suggestions or ideas.
Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So one of I think we've had some, at the last meeting that I attended, we had some discussions around a recommendation with the Simon Court Park. Currently it's slated to be like within the within the master plan, it's slated to be removed and the equipment to be moved to the Simon Street Parkette.
Right.
You know, I know we've heard some anecdotal pieces around community members and also the Early On Center accessing that park. So I'm wondering if that can be, I don't know if that's related to the budget. It's like, I don't know if there's any capital improvements that are required for that park to keep it at its current place, but you know, I view that as a quick win for this committee to be hearing what our community is saying, what one of our, you know, valued services is utilizing, and preserving it that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Initially, you're right. It was slated to sort of kind of be removed, and it is aging. It does need likely full replacement. So I'm wondering if that would be sort of a recommendation from us to council to do maybe one of two things or both. Sort of the recommendation to revisit the plans for Simon Court Park. So almost like a revision of that particular part within the Parks and Rec. And then secondary to that would be looking at what the budget would be in order to facilitate new park equipment in that park. So I think it might be sort of a two-part resolution. And then, you know, even adding on to that would be potentially, you know, if it's feasible, to maybe begin with that park and be one of the areas that we look at to address for 2024. So yeah, that I could see that for sure is, but if there's anything else, you know, that people are thinking as well, or just want to, you know, you have something you want to pull out from the plan as well, by all means, go ahead, Dan.
So I know we've been in council, we've been talking about this quite a bit too. So just to kind of maybe give everybody in the group an update. That's what council is looking at. They're also looking at the quick hits, what can be done fairly quickly based on information that's been given from our planner, based on these plans that have come out. One of the items that was the Simon Court Park. That did come up. Also, the walking trails. The walking trails seem to be a heavy, can be an easy, quick fix for the town, because the town staff can actually finish those. They don't have to bring in a lot of other people to do all that kind of stuff. So that was another item that they were looking at. And so that just over the next little while, that kind of just gives us what we were kind of looking at, from my standpoint, from council. We also have the park at the Natasha Peterson's ground there too. That's a really, really outdated park. So that might be something that we strive for too, just because that I drive up that road quite a bit in the last little while, and I've noticed a lot of little kids in that area using the swings, using the slide, and that too. So I think personally, anything that we can get back to council's eyes that's kind of run down and needs to be upgraded, I think those are fairly quick, easy hits for us to say too, and push forward into council's eyes too, would be one of my recommendations from this committee too. Thanks.
Definitely. Steve?
I guess what is the timeline for this, Lindsay? Are we looking to do this today, or is it that you want us to go away and come back with our top 2 or 3, and then we decide at a future meeting, whether that is at our next scheduled meeting or some meeting sooner? I'm just trying to figure that out. Is the intention to try to resolve and make a recommendation today?
I mean, I would love to give a little more time, but we're kind of behind already on budget. So we're having a special budget meeting coming up. I think it's October 2nd. So I think the sooner we can have at least a few items to kind of, take to council, the better. But I mean, I hear ya. I would love to give everyone just a little more time to say, okay, this is what I really feel, or this is what I really feel. I just don't know if we have that time. So Alice, like, what are you thinking, timeline budget wise for the town with regards to us presenting something that can be included in the budget that council will then be reviewing?
So for clarification, the special budget meeting on October the 2nd is related to grant funding. So,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So that would not pertain to this topic. As far as the budget for 2024, council will have multiple meetings from when it's presented to when it's finally adopted in December.
Okay.
So there within the budget, and Will, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a better understanding of the parks budget. But there will be budget, like dollar amounts budgeted for parks. So even if we don't have the specific project tonight, that doesn't mean there's not going to be dollars budgeted for parks.
Okay. So there could be something, kind of available if we, take a little longer than expected to present something to council.
So, it can be an ongoing dialogue between the committee and council. This is a quick win. This is what we see the priority. Council is going to receive the Parks and Recreation Master Plan on Monday night. And then we'll also have a clearer understanding of where council is going with this Parks and Recreation Master Plan. If they're going to adopt it, if they're going to scrap it, if they're going to start over, if they're going to, not that I,
God.
not that I see that happening, but right? Like
I'm waiting way too long for this report.
Well, that's the thing with this one too, is that even with council, there's on our side, there's been no direction given even which plan we're picking or how we're putting them all together to make anything work. But we know what's going to stay. We know the walking trails are going to stay. We know the Simon Court Park is going to stay. We know the park at the school is going to stay. So those can be 3 quick hit items that can be easily put in, planned for. Spring, done, easy peasy. Here we go. We've got our connecting links all done with our trails. That provides a lot of walking area around town, and a lot of people that get to certain areas too that need to get shortcuts that the shortcuts aren't there yet, and stuff like that. So that's me just sitting on the 2 stools, and Lindsay, you're the same way. You're sitting on the 2 stools. You know what council's looking at. You know what we need to look at here. And I think just even for us sitting as a Parks and Rec committee, we don't even know what direction council is going to take with which plan yet to even say, you know what, that plan is good, but if this and this was done, once they select the plan, then it comes back to us, and I can see us saying, you know what, if this and this were changed, or this and this was done with it, this and this, because it's not going to be locked in stone. It's going to be a growing document from day one, right? So we know that for a fact. So I think if we can send something back to council, because we've been sitting on the master's plan for a while now, it'd be kind of good just to hear from us to say, hey, listen, we've had conversations about this. We kind of agree some of the quick hits would be this, and this. Not necessarily go with that, but it's something that we've discussed and we know that are quick hits on our side too, right? Because without any direction from council on what we're going to do, we're kind of sitting in a limbo piece here right now of what plan we need to follow and what recommendations we can make to each plan. Because if they decide to pick this one, well, okay, then we'll look at that one and go through that steps. And then we pick this one, you don't know which one they're going to pick yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Here's what I would suggest then, is I agree that, I mean, this committee was established for us to show some form of leadership, right? And make suggestions. And you're right. When it goes back to council, whether council agrees with those suggestions is up to council. But I agree with your point wholeheartedly, you and Lindsay, that let's come up with a few ideas. You guys are both wearing the two hats anyways. And I think some of the ones that were mentioned, especially when it comes to Natasha Patterson, because I remember a while back, people complaining about the degradation of the equipment there. It was a safety issue. So I think if we're hovering around that in Natasha Park, that should be dealt with right away, right? And so I see that certainly in any quick win, from a liability standpoint, safety standpoint, that should be a priority before we talk about bells and whistles in other parks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think whatever time that you think is appropriate, Dan, Lindsay, and everybody else, as to how much time we need to digest this to come back with. We could do it by email, so it doesn't take a lot of time if we want to do it that way. But or maybe we could just agree that Simon Park and Natasha Patterson are the 2 or 3 that we feel should be addressed right away. Because in Simon Park, I'm also looking at, Lindsay, you would know this as well, about the need for additional outdoor basketball courts. We heard that through the entire elections, you know, you heard that too, I'm sure, Dan, about basketball courts as well. So we might be able to knock off a few birds with one stone with just those recommendations there.
Yep, for sure. And that's where I think, like, you know, to Dan's point too, we're a little bit sort of up in the air right now because we don't have, you know, sort of direct direction. But then council was sort of relying on us as well to kind of come back to them with some, you know, after we looked at the master plan too. So I think it's a little bit of, you know, both sides going kind of back and forth right now until we get some actual direction. And I think you're right with the aspect of, you know, it needs to be adopted first. So whether or not, you know, come Monday, it is, you know, actually, you know, council decides to make that decision, then that helps us, you know, move forward. But, you know, to your point, Steve, as well, I think you're right. I think we were created to sort of show some leadership and you know, sort of take the reins a little bit. And, you know, if we can kind of have, even if it's just a little resolution this evening that says, okay, council, once you decide, you know, if and when you're adopting, you know, this Parks and Rec plan, we would like you to initially look at A, B, C, D, right? And then, you know, from there, again, it's still kind of in their court, the ball's in their court, whether they want to do that or not. But at least we've shown that leadership that we say, okay, we've looked at the plan and here's what we feel are sort of our quick wins and our most, you know, because of the quick wins and the aspect of funding behind that. The flip side to that as well is what needs to be done kind of right away, right? The not only for safety, but just, you know, we know that the Natasha Patterson, I mean, I think that was 1970 something.
I don't think I've seen a steel slide in
Right?
20 years. Like none of my kids have never been burned by a
Second-degree
metal
burns.
slide. Like, I grew up with that, but they've
Although those
mostly
plastic ones, they can still get pretty hot and they're bad for static electricity. So
Yes.
the shock factor on those suckers are it's always fun.
I'm gonna take that over 150 degree. I'd rather not be able to cook an egg.
I agree. So yeah. So, you know, again, out of speaking, you know, with regards to Steve's point too, with liability issues and whatnot, we really should be looking at addressing some of those, you know, that park, for example, initially, right? Try, you know, to get that updated and especially too, because, you know, like Dan said, driving around there's a lot more families or younger kids now that are trying to utilize that park. And, you know, it's just not very, feasible right now. Like it's just a pretty sad park. So I also like maybe, you know, with like I said, with A, B, and C, which would be Simon Court Park, the 2-part to that, which is for one, you know, looking at the plan or redoing the plan where it actually stays, and then secondary to that is, you know, going forward with the cost plan and looking at redoing that park, to completing the trails. to the Natasha Patterson, obviously, and then looking at which we could sort of suggest either town staff to do or whatnot, or council to direct staff to do, would be looking at locations of for more basketball courts. So because I think that that could be another you know, a quick win potentially as well, even if it's a partnership with the school or however. I don't know how that would work, but you know, we know we need more of those for sure. So yeah, so I guess Alice, what would we
Just
need?
a quick question before you go, Madam Chair, and this is both to you and Councillor Sample. With the trails, remind me, are we talking about gravel or are we talking about paved? I love the idea of finishing the trails. I think that is smart. Was it gravel or paved?
I think it's recycled asphalt. So it'll be like a recycled asphalt that's then compacted so that it's as accessible as, well, it'll be 100% accessible. We have to comply to that. But it'll be a little bit more cost effective than full on asphalt. I know Will wants full on asphalt.
Yes,
I know, I mean, I do too, but I think for right now, you know, it'll still be able to be maintained in the winter because it will be compacted. But it'll be the recycled asphalt aspect.
We're not concerned about the longevity of that. I hate to bring this up as a sore spot, but it feels like, you know, we were talking about what kind of paint we should use for the Indigenous crosswalk, and we ended up choosing something as a group that, you know, was cost effective, and I think we all saw how that turned out within a short period of time, and whether that can all be blamed on the kind of paint that we used, but are we concerned about the longevity of this other option that seems to be cheaper? Or is it they're sort of guaranteeing us a 25-year guarantee, for example? I'm not sure.
Definitely. Will, I'll let you speak to that if you can.
So for an asphalt, obviously be less maintenance for an asphalt pathway. A recycled asphalt pathway, there'll be a little bit more maintenance involved with that, just for like grading it, recompacting it probably once a year because of weather off and on in seasons. Asphalt definitely has a disadvantage as well, right? Because once it starts to deteriorate, we got to replace it as well. So that's going to be the same cost of the replacement of asphalt to asphalt, which is very expensive compared to recycled asphalt. Like, I mean, I can throw a little bit of estimating quotes just for like the pathway around Morden would cost somewhere around 300,000 almost just to get paved. So there is quite substantial savings if you do recycled asphalt.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, a little bit of benefits on both sides and negatives on both sides, I guess you can say too, right? So, but you know, what we could do in the resolution as well, you know, we could sort of stipulate that we would like the trails to be completed and new ones to be facilitated, with the, you know, option of having the cost sort of be brought back to us with both recycled and paved. I don't know, Alice, do you know in the report if it sort of shows the price for, it would be the recycled, I believe, right? Is kind of what we're basing it off of?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
so I think so too. So I would assume that that's our sort of average.
Because the committee doesn't have a budget, it would be council that would be making that decision as far as the budget, which way to go.
Exactly. So we could only sort of recommend that council take a look at the cost of both aspects and weigh it out at that point, right? So paved versus recycled asphalt. But I know that, yeah, the sort of the cost that was given in the report would be, I'm pretty sure, based on the recycled asphalt. So obviously it would be more. I don't know how much more, but it would be definitely more. Yeah, so I guess from there, it's just sort of figuring out how we're going to word this and who wants to move it and second it. How would we sort of go about that, Alice? Do you know, like, is it just sort of basic wordage?
Yeah, you can just do basic wordage. I'll type it out to the best of my ability as you're speaking it, and then just get your mover and seconder. And then, yeah. But I
Okay.
think Randy had his hand up too. I
Oh,
wasn't certain.
sorry, Randy, I didn't see you. You're muted though.
So I'm just, not everything I heard in what you said and Dan said and Steve said. I mean, I agreed with a lot of it. I didn't agree with it all. So I think it's kind of tough in this kind of setting to come to an agreement amongst the five of us or whatever in terms of what we broadly want to say. So for example, I'm not sure that dismantling the Simon Court Parkette, I think that's the right idea. I don't disagree with doing that because you got the Simon Street Park right down the road. I mean, I grew up on Simon Court, not grew up there, but I lived there 15 years, so I understand it a bit. I'm also concerned about the trails. I know there's some trails that are in great shape, other trails that are just terrible shape. I'm sure the town has some sort of report on the condition of all the trails around town. So speaking a little bit for the seniors, I'd say let's look at the trails that are in really poor condition. I'll say the trail between Main Street and Simon Street that goes to Simon Street Park is in terrible condition. Well, other paths are in great condition, and they're not done with recycled asphalt either. So I'm just, from my perspective, I haven't heard enough or seen enough to tell me what we should be doing with the trails or even to make a recommendation on it. So I'm okay with us voting on it, but I'm just not sure that I would support it just based upon my level of knowledge. My other kind of question would be in terms of all the the town had a number of public meetings, I think, in regards to the plan. I was just wondering what the responses were from the public on the plan itself. I think that would help guide the committee. I think I know what I think, but I'd like to know what the rest of the town or the other people that contributed or were part of these meetings said as well. I think that should help guide us. So I'm not sure if that information's out there and available or whether it's been documented somehow, but I think that's something as a committee we should look at. And I guess the last thing is the kicker is always, we don't control the money. I mean, you and Dan do, obviously, but the rest of us, we can say whatever we want, but everything's got dollars attached to it. And it's really, it would be important to me to know what kind of budget are we working with? So, and not what we're working with, but what can we recommend on? So if the town's going to adopt this whole plan at $20 million and you're going to spend, $1 million a year, it'd be easier for us to make recommendations if we knew kind of what the dollar constraints were. And I know this is a chicken and egg kind of thing, but again, that's kind of information I'd be looking for before I'd be, willing to put my name on a motion or to vote on some of these things that we're talking about. On the other hand, I totally agree with you. I think we need to show leadership. I think we should be sending something to council. I'm just not sure what it is.
Right. No, you make very valid points there for sure, because you're exactly right. I mean, we could say whatever we want, and yet we don't know what budget is potentially going to be, set aside for any of these projects to even begin with. So, yeah.
I don't think that's Randy, you raised some good points. The only thing I would say, the issue with the trails and finding out more information about that, hopefully that's something that we could get a turnaround on. But I wonder if we put forward the recommendations and council says, finishing the trails, etc., and they say, yes, in our wisdom, that's a great move. Then we could start to get into the weeds of where they should be starting first and prioritizing first if they were to accept that proposal, right? And so I agree with you. It is a chicken and the egg, but I think in the sense of, well, how much are they prepared to spend? And so, we could line up our recommendations based on what they want to spend. I still think that we should make the recommendation. I agree, get as much information that we need to get in a timely way to make us comfortable, but make the recommendation. And if they agree with it, then we could really get into the nuances and into the weeds of that recommendation or acceptance of that recommendation is my thought, Randy, on that.
Sure. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, because I think it will stem back to, if we kind of just put in there, like, we want the, the trails to be completed or revitalized or whatnot, to Steve's point, then if council accepts that, then we can say, okay, we've had a look and these are the ones we want you to sort of start with, right? Because we want to fix the bad ones. I know, Will, you had said the Simon pathway there, I think it is, I'm correct, is already sort of slated for some, because it
Some work-
floods. So you guys are like
Yeah, it gets
doing some
flooded
stuff.
over the springtime, so we are looking at adding maybe type of boardwalk through there, so it'll be a lot less maintenance through there to make the trail a little bit better. So that is something that we are looking at as well.
Okay. Okay, good. I just remember kind of during that little meeting that you sort of mentioned something about that little pathway there, because of the flooding aspect, and that it was already on your radar. So, you know, that's really good to hear as well.
Will the improvement of the parking lot of that center, will that improve the flooding at the bottom of that Simon Court parquet?
Flooding.
Like, is it from the runoff from like the snow storage in that parking lot off of Dufferin Oaks?
I think I know when they plow their parking lot, they dump all the snow on the side of Simon Street Parquet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be up to, we gotta speak to Dufferin Oaks to stop me putting their snow there, because otherwise it's always gonna flood out if they keep putting snow up.
Yeah.
there.
Well, I know that they've ripped out the entire lot right now, so I didn't know if their improvements would.
And that
that,
it could help, yeah, if they're sort of pitching a little bit different now that the park or the you know, it'll be repaved. There could be some improvements with regards to that for sure. I know the sort of the trail that we were talking about sort of runs kind of behind the gas station, I guess you could say. That's there. It sort of runs through that sort of area. And that's where it tends to flood a little bit down there because it's very low laying. So town was, I think you guys had redone some screening and stuff already there, right?
Yeah. Problem is just kind of keeps washing out a bit from the flooding. So.
Yeah. So it seems to be a little bit of a trouble zone for us right now. Like, you know, town staff has already addressed it with regards to replacing some screening and things like that. But as Will just mentioned, it because of the flooding, it tends to sort of wash away. So the next step is like, you know, Will mentioned a potential like boardwalk, just that will, you know, it'll lift that trail up a little bit and facilitate a little bit of better drainage so that it won't sort of wash out the trail that connects Simon Street area to Main Street. So, okay, so I guess, yeah, the idea here is if we want to sort of create sort of a resolution to council, how we're going to kind of word it. And, you know, by all means, if someone doesn't necessarily agree, that's okay. You can vote no to not do it yet. But, you know, we can at least get some kind of motion on the floor and go from there. So.
It can be just too, Lindsay. It can be just worded to the fact that there was recommendations brought forth from the planner. And basically I just repeated what he said in this meeting here. His recommendations for the quick hits would be the trail system, the Simon Court and Natasha Patterson. Those were his recommendations in our council meeting. So even if we just say that we agree with we brought the information as counselors, we brought it to the committee, talked about it, and then we agree with what the recommendations coming from the planner too. I'm not just like, I agree that we need to send something to council to say something. I'm not sure. I'm not a wordsmith on it all. I know Randy's really good at wordsmithing.
When I can write it down, yeah.
So, yeah, so I do agree that we need to send something. So whether it be to the fact of let it be resolved that the Parks and Recs committee agree with the planners with the 3 items listed as being
quick wins.
As quick wins as move forward. But then again, obviously with what Randy was saying, I do agree with what Randy said, is that we need some more information coming back from council too on budget. Also, I as council, we haven't even heard what the results are of anything that happened with the public forums yet. So that's going to come to us too. So I know we need to send something. We should be sending something, but I don't think it needs to be so cut in stone that it's one of those things, if you know what I mean. So that's just my opinion on it. But that's just me. So
So just based on that, it sounds like maybe we need to, as much as we agree that something needs to come, that maybe we just hold off. Particularly because for me, the point that was raised about if there's any information about the community and their preferences. I think safety issues have to be dealt with right away, I think regardless, but I think that before we make a recommendation to council, we should at least in this committee consider what the community had to say. Because what's the point of having them go through the exercise? So I think maybe the best thing to do is probably just wait, see how quickly we can get that information, Madam Chair, and then go from there.
Yep, that makes sense too, and I agree with you. It's very important to make sure that the community weighs in. I mean, that's why we know Simon Court Park, right? Because as it was sort of suggested in the recommendation of the plan, it was to be removed, and until sort of that information was presented to the community, and they were like, wait, hold on, we really use this park more than what you thought we did. There's a lot of kids in sort of this little area, and it really does help, and as well as the early on center. So you're right. I think it does make sense to maybe wait, even though I want to sort of show leadership and bring something, till we have a little bit more information with regards to what budget we may be looking at, and also what the community weighed in on. Alice, do you know when we would be getting that report? Because we just finished the Zoom meeting there on last Thursday, right? So when would that sort of information be collaborated and presented to council?
My understanding is that information is going to be included in the report that is coming to council on Monday night. Will, is that your understanding as well? Yeah. So what I would suggest to the committee is it will be on the agenda that is posted for council by the end of this week, tomorrow or Friday, might be Friday. And
here we go again.
The members on the committee take a look at that report and read that report. I will add it to the agenda for your October 18th meeting. But to give yourself plenty of time to review the report and understand it, it will be the exact same report that's going to council on Monday, will be the report that is on your agenda for October 18th.
Okay, Randy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, something unrelated, whenever you get a chance, Lindsay.
Oh, okay, so we'll finish up with this. Okay, yeah, so that's great. I didn't expect it to kind of be back that quick, so that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, so then that'll help us by October. Then we'll know if the plan was adopted and whatnot. Then we'll have some input from the community with regards to the plan in the first place, and then we may even have potential budget allocations, or at least an idea of, hopefully, that will then help us come back with a soft but strong recommendation as to what, with all that information, we feel could be those quick, easy wins to begin with. So, okay. So,
and we can just leave it as that. And then also we can give an update quickly to council on Monday night too, in our open session, and just say, listen, we discussed these items. We're still mulling things around. We haven't come back with anything definite yet, but we're working on it too. So just so they have a heads up and an update. So that might be just a way to handle it too. So.
Yep. Perfect. I think that's great. So if everyone's okay with that, then we'll sort of table it, I guess you could say, or hold off on that for right now until the October 18th meeting. And we'll move on to new business where Randy can continue with his statement, and then we can talk about the wind phones. Okay, go ahead, Randy.
And so mine's just kind of an old man pet peeve kind of thing. So because I find in-person meetings way more productive than Zoom meetings, and I know this is the way that things are going, and I know council has recommended that we have Zoom meetings, but I find in-person meetings way more engaging, way more productive. And maybe it's just me, but I just like to throw up my 2 cents, as I did at the CDRC, that I think it's important that we have in-person meetings. Just my rant, I'll leave it at that. If anybody else has a common thoughts, I'm okay with that. If
I'll
not, I'm
rant.
okay
I'll rant
too.
with you, Randy. I'll rant with you on that.
I completely agree. There are certain things for me, sometimes it's just, I'm last minute sometimes, so it's like easier for me to get on Zoom, but, that just means I would have to change some of my daily routines in order to facilitate that. We did have this discussion, as well at, the Heritage Committee, meeting. So there were some people within the Heritage Committee that also feel that in person is better. So, you know, it's something we could, it is up for discussion with regards to council in general. We don't have it set in stone that it's going to remain this way. I'm not sure when it may come back to the table, but I know that it's up for review soon, I think. Alice, do you remember? Do we have to bring it back personally, or is it just up for review as a general timeline?
So council passed a resolution that all committees would remain virtual for 2023.
2023.
So then council would have to revisit it in December for
2024.
For 2024, and it is feedback that I've been getting from multiple committees. So it is something that is on staff's radar.
Okay. Yeah. So I knew it was kind of something. So it was good to clarify that it was, that it is coming up for sort of review. And the great thing is that, you know, with us being on different committees like that, in each individual counselor can come and just say, okay, yeah, I'm on this committee and this committee. And we do have an overwhelming number of members who would actually prefer to go back to in person. So that way, when council weighs this decision again, they have some information with regards to, you know, real time, members of the committees who you know, to say what they want.
Yeah, that's all I wanted, Lindsay. I just want to make people aware. I'm fine with your response. That sounds great to me. And if it does come up at the meeting in December, I don't mind going and speaking to the pros of having in-person meetings either.
Yep. No, that would be wonderful, because it's always good to have, you know, we as council, we can always just chirp back and forth to other counselors, but, you know, having someone actually come and say, hey, like, I am on this committee and I would really prefer to go back to in person. It has a little bit of a heavier weight, right? So that would, you know, definitely be appreciated as well.
Randy, I mean, come on, this is the new frontier, man. I mean, days
You
that
know
we
I'm
used
an
to watch
old
the
guy,
Olympics.
Steve.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I would enjoy sitting next to you again, but I mean, come on. I mean, I don't mind the virtual meetings here and there. I would just hope that there's some flexibility, but I agree, Randy, it's better in person, but I wouldn't want to get rid of the virtual altogether.
I don't mind sometimes if we have just, you know, normal course of business, but if we're sitting down talking about this plan and getting detailed, I think it's much better in person. I'm open to some sort of mix, but I think we should have the option of meeting in person if we want to.
Does the town have the capability of hosting hybrid meetings?
Not very efficiently.
Not very well. So you can set up a laptop on a table kind of deal.
Right now, our council meetings are recorded on an iPad.
Yeah, it's
all right.
it's
I'm in favor of having a night out, even if it's Parks and Rec. So I got two small kids. So please tell me I have to be on site. I'm just here to do my duty, and I'm at the whims of this committee. So I'm in support of it.
Most definitely. So, and like I said, I kind of agree. A little bit of both is a great idea. You know, I definitely agree with Randy when we're looking at, you know, really going through this report. It's a lengthy report. There's a lot of information. Sometimes it's just a little easier to you know, have that report sort of in front of you and maybe as a physical copy. And then when someone says, oh, well, look at this, you know, and you can kind of point it out to them, like on the page, it does help to sort of communicate your ideas a little bit better. You know, if it's a, you know, not really a thorough agenda, or it's a light agenda, for example, then, you know, why not just, you know, throw a Zoom together, right? But yeah, when we're getting into the sort of nitty gritty about, you know, this actual plan itself, when we really have to dive into it, it could be, you know, beneficial to be in person for that. So now I don't, again, you know, depending on when we're going to be coming back to council with some of these recommendations, it may not be the first couple of recommendations that we provide to council, because, you know, obviously we would have a meeting in October and one in November, and then depending on when it lands, I guess maybe not December, I'm not sure. But as it stands right now, the recommendation, or the, you know, the rule is to continue in Zoom. So the first couple of recommendations that we offer to council will likely have to be decided upon at a Zoom meeting, but there's no reason why we can't, you know, definitely bring that you know, sort of idea to council for January or February when we dive into it a little bit more. So yeah, perfect. Good to note that, so I can note it with my other committee that also noted it. And so yeah, the next new business would be sort of creating, if we want to, a resolution to council with regards to the wind phones. So anyone who would like to speak to that, you're more than welcome to.
I mean, I think they're a simple addition. I think they can be a meaningful contribution to our community. I don't know about, I mean, it's off the top of my head, like just with viewing that video and seeing the kind of places that these are placed, like, you know, they're private locations, they're typically in nature. I think, you know, as we complete the network of paths through town, potentially the forest beside beside No Frills at Fiddle Park. I mean, it's our largest acreage of forest. I think that, you know, as the trails through there could be a spot that could be nice and meaningful to families. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I think it's a small thing that can certainly support grieving families in our community.
Definitely, I agree. I think, Alice, do you remember, or Will, do you remember, is there going to be a path that goes through the little forest over by the waste treatment plant? There's that little grouping of behind the Besley Creek there.
Yes.
There is a path through there eventually too, right?
Eventually, yeah. Once the development's done there on 600 Main is kind of what the idea is. How to pass.
Okay.
So
Okay, so yeah, there'll be an
very good
opportunity, a potential opportunity in the future for that too. So, yep, Alice.
Sorry, if I can just add one thing that Maureen didn't indicate in her presentation, but did indicate to me via email when we were corresponding about setting up the presentation. They have these phones, they have this grant funding, and the intent is to install them this fall. There is the possibility for more in the future, but they're specifically looking for a potential commitment because they have them right now. And they'd like to get them installed before the winter.
Right, that makes sense. And
piece.
Yeah, and I did want to note as well, because again, I don't know if it was clearly relayed, but they will facilitate maintenance on them as well. So if there is any damage, for example, or a phone needs to be 100% replaced, they will come out and they will facilitate that. So it's not like town staff is really going to have to divulge, you know, time or efforts into maintaining them, or, you know, keeping an eye on them, or that sort of thing, because they will do that, which I thought was awesome too. So Steve, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, thanks. I'm in favor of it. I was thinking somewhere in and around the community garden area.
That's where I was thinking too. Yeah.
In my opinion, I think it should be an area that is, how do I put this, well established. And the reason why I say that is because of safety concerns. And that wasn't touched upon. I mean, it looked like, you know, people were going through a middle of a forest to go access this tree. And if something were to happen and we facilitated this by allowing them to put it there, and something happens in some remote area where the lighting is poor, and we can't assume that people are just going to go there during certain times during the day, only in daylight, and so we have nothing to worry about. So I think we have to be mindful, if we do move forward, the location and how well lit, how well traveled in this area. I get the idea that you don't want to put it at a bus stop on Phil Park Lane, but we just have to make sure that we're cognizant of exactly where we're putting it, and safety features that should be in place potentially to ensure that people could do that safely.
Yeah, No, you're exactly right. And that's actually, when I heard about this, my first thought was the community gardens. That's kind of where I thought, I was like, oh, what a perfect place for it, you know, because the gardens are there, there's benches, there's, you know, there's adequate lighting. It's still semi-private, I guess you could say, you know, unless there's somebody else working on their garden. It's not, you know, overly attended. So you would likely have some time where, you know, you would be by yourself and have that you know, time to speak without anyone else being around. So I agree with you. I did really like that idea. So now I think with the recommendation too, it's if we want to move forward with you know, sort of recommending this to council, it would be sort of a suggestion to council that, you know, we like this idea. You know, if we wanted to, we could sort of suggest, we could throw a little hint in there for the community gardens. But I think the base of the recommendation would be for that council direct staff to look or to partner with Maureen, and then come back to, you know, council at another, hopefully a sooner than later meeting with recommendations to locations, and go from there. So, you know, for us, it would just be telling council about this program in the first place, and that we support it, and we want them to engage with staff to partner with them in order to facilitate further information. Alice, you had your hand up.
Perfect.
Sorry,
Just
Will
one-
has it. He has the same point.
Yeah.
Okay.
The community garden is a locked facility, so it have to be on the outside of the community garden if you guys want it that way.
Is there there's like a gate that you can't, like, the whole
No,
area?
No, it's just locked for the actual people that have plots in there for their garden.
Yeah. Okay. So like it could be
You can
like
go on
in
the
that
outside of it.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
in that area though.
Yeah. We can
Yeah.
probably go-
Okay. Perfect. Because that's what I was thinking. Like not like
Okay.
right in with the community gardens, but over in that sort of area. There's like a little gazebo or something there too, right?
But it's inside the community garden.
Oh, it is inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we
There-
would just have to facilitate like around that area, but generally kind of over there. I mean, with regards to the master plan, there is, you know, sort of a plan to have that memorial garden, right? So even something of that nature, having one in there, but we don't have it yet. So that would
Right.
have to be for future placements of where to put them. We need something that could facilitate, like Alice mentioned, you know, in the fall. So it would have to be something, you know, now that it could go into, you know, again,
So let's
even,
let's just make the resolution and move
Yeah.
forward to say, get this back into council's hands and council to work with her on it, and then we'll come up with the best location for it.
yeah,
I think
definitely.
we're done.
Because
I
that's
think
where
we're
I
done.
think, yeah, that's what I think you're right. Town staff will kind of have a general idea as to where they feel that this will liability wise and privacy wise be the best place or the best course of action. So, I mean,
Sure.
even myself too, I'm thinking even the Natasha Patterson Pavilion, like somewhere even over there could be maybe a secondary phone, right? But yeah, we'll leave that up to town staff to come back to council, and then council will make the decision. Alice?
So do you want me to read out a sample resolution based on what?
Yes,
I'm
please.
From the committee?
Yes, please.
So be it resolved that the Parks and Recreation Task Force supports the installation of a wind phone in Shelburne, and that the task force recommends a location within Fiddle Park near the community gardens, and that staff be requested to work with the Our Hills of Headwaters Collaborative Working Group Ontario Health Team to facilitate the installation.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Sounds good to me.
I'll move it.
So we need a
I'll
mover
second.
and a seconder. So Dan and
I'll
Kyle.
take sec.
Perfect. And all in favor? Excellent. Okay. So that'll go back to council for obviously not Monday's meeting, right? It'll be the next one. Okay, perfect. So we'll try and get it installed before the snow flies, although there was frost this morning, which I did not appreciate. Okay, does anyone else have any new business that they would like to discuss before we decide to adjourn? Nope, pretty good. Okay, so be it resolved that we now adjourn to reconvene at the call of the chair, and that would be October 18th. So mark that down in your calendar so we have quorum. as I was already a brat for the Heritage Committee, and I made sure that I said that multiple times, that we need to make sure we make quorum in order to facilitate, you know, the ideas and the things that we want done and get them done. So if we you know, don't make quorum and we can't come to the, you know, get the meetings in place, we prolong stuff and it never happens. So we got to make sure we're here. Okay, so do I need a mover and seconder for that too, right? Yeah, so a mover and seconder for that, Dan and Kyle again, and all in favor? Perfect. So we are now adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone, for showing up. It's again very much appreciated, so that we can move forward with, you know, the recommendations and the plans that we want, and yeah, hopefully see some change.